Welcome back to Closing Conversations, the show for founders, leaders, and sellers who win together. I'm your host, Max Notice. Today's guest is Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan helps manage a foundation focused on funding projects that create sustainable jobs, support development, and stimulate local economies in parts of the world that need it most. But this conversation went somewhere I did not expect. We started with global projects, wealth preservation, and how Reagan evaluates opportunities. Then we got into something every founder, leader, and salesperson deals with constantly: how to read people without fooling yourself. Reagan is a way of saying things that hit immediately. Don't prejudge people. Don't blindly give them the benefit of the doubt either. Watch their actions. Pay attention to red flags. And don't confuse hope with evidence. We talk about trust, sales, pain, accountability, bad deals, false optimism, and why the most dangerous lies are often the ones we tell ourselves. This one is sharp, funny, blunt, and packed with lines I'll be stealing for a long time. Let's get into it.
All right. So anyway, I want to make sure we make the most of the time. There's no formal agenda here. Why don't you start by just telling us, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm fortunate in the fact that I help manage a foundation that's made up of what we call 26 uber wealthy trustees. And the foundation with a mission statement within that foundation, Max, is to fund projects that create jobs. Now, not just construction jobs, but sustainable jobs. We like doing developments. We like working in underdeveloping countries. And we like stimulating the economy in those areas.
I remember from our conversation last time, you were saying, there are a lot of investors, there are a lot of funds, portfolios out there, but you have a particular focus on, I don't know how to phrase it, on stuff that impacts the world in a very positive way. It's about dollars and cents, but it's not just about dollars and cents.
You're right. Although we don't believe in wealth creation, that's not what we're about. We're more about wealth preservation. But as you mentioned, Max, I didn't say that we're going to get into a business that's never going to make a profit. What I am saying is that we think more kind of long term, and we realize that some of these investments will take years to pay back. But again, we're not so much on the wealth creation as we are wealth preservation.
So then let me ask, how do you find, these different projects that you work on?
I was going to say 99.99, but 100% of the time they come to us and I get a lot of referrals. So an example, we did a solar project in Uganda. I don't know if you knew this, but 90% of the people don't have electric or power. Well, from there, then the president of Uganda referred me to the president of Tanzania. And I also was not aware of this, but corn grows like a weed there. So what was the solution? An ethanol plant. And then from there, they referred me to the president of South Africa, and we're doing a waste to energy project. I'm smiling right now because it's like the thing that came out recently on Tiger Woods. And I'll admit, I kind of did that. I think it was about a year ago. I was in communications with the staff there at Uganda and dealt with the Minister of Transportation that I deal with as well. So I just thought it was funny. I was like, I'm on the phone with the president. I've pulled that card as well.
Wow. Well, that's definitely cool. But, I'm thinking about this here. You're being put in these different projects, these different folks are reaching out to you and saying that we have something, whether it be bringing electricity to Uganda, whether it be growing corn in Tanzania, like you're saying. I'm sure that you have a lot of different options in front of you as to where you can put your, not only funds, but where you can put your focus. Now, when these different people or these different organizations or entities come to you, what are things that are red flags? What are things that are green flags? Like, what are things that you see where you think they're onto something? This is the right group of people. I can trust them. Their plan makes sense. Like, what are things that you see there versus what are things that when they come to you say, this isn't going to work. There's no way that this is going to take.
I really like that question because there's a lot to it to unpack. What I don't want to forget is on the trust part, and then we're going to get to your main question. What are the things I look for? What are the things that are kind of red flags? Let's first begin with the trust part. Have you ever heard the expression that we shouldn't prejudge people? So what I notice happens just a little too often in business is we do this thing called giving people the benefit of the doubt. Whether we interview somebody because it was a referral of a family friend, or whether it's, as you put it, something you see in an email that seems like a great return on investment, and that person is asking you to give them the benefit of the doubt. Well, if I gave them the benefit of the doubt, then I'd be prejudging. And we all know that we shouldn't prejudge, should we?
Wow, that's so insightful. And I thought that you were going to go a different way when you said that, prejudging. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I coach a lot of salespeople. And so often they go onto the call and they'll think, and they're giving the client the benefit of the doubt, where the client will say, I'll think about this and never get back to them. This happens over and over again. And then they get on the phone with another client and they say, I'll get back to you. And you're hoping, you're so hopeful, but you're disillusioning yourself. Whereas if you say, this is the reality of the situation, the past 100 times someone said they've gotten back to me, they haven't. I'm not just going to give this person the benefit of the doubt because I want them to like me. I'm going to be realistic about this. Those salespeople do so much better.
I didn't even get to land the plane. The main punchline was great. The punchline was, so if I asked you, being a sales trainer and coach, you could say to that person, here's even a better one. Can you think of someone that is, I'm going to say, religious or a strong faith? Do you have anyone like that you coach that is of strong faith? Okay, I would ask that person, have you heard that they say that we shouldn't prejudge people? So are we in agreement that prejudging is considered not good? But you always give people the benefit of the doubt, don't you? So isn't giving someone the benefit of the doubt prejudging? So then here's the part where I said is the main line. They're then going to say, wait a minute, now I'm really confused. You said that we shouldn't prejudge people, and you're also telling me that I shouldn't give people the benefit of the doubt. So then which of the two should I do? The answer is neither one of the two. We're going to get to know each other. Over time, we're going to find out.
That's so interesting. Can I tell you, Reagan, that's really insightful, because when you say, I think when we as people say prejudge, you're thinking one way, but it really cuts both ways. I'm not going to assume that you have good, pure intention, because why? Because I hope you do? It cuts, I need whatever you are, good or bad, that's going to be proven to me over time.
And what a great discussion we're having, because it's still really answering the question. You just have to connect the dots. And you kind of answered it also by saying that you coach salespeople that will believe that person that will say this. You didn't say this, but this is here's what your message conveyed. I have a business card of someone that I'm probably not going to call. Here's another one that's on the side. That's why it would be that person that comes and goes, got a business card? Oh, I'll call you. Yeah, I'll call you. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll call you. You think he's going to call? Now, why is he not going to call? Because he's a business owner that is busy and gets all kinds of calls and emails. So now let's think about this. That same person that that would believe that person that says, got a car? I'll call you. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Does this person also claim to be a person of faith? Does he? It's a question. Okay. So then doesn't just about every religion say that when someone is off and going in the direction they shouldn't, that the right thing would be to call them out? Isn't that what you do as a sales trainer, is accountability? Okay. So we know of this well-known franchise called McDonald's, and they have this thing that they say, customer's always right, don't they? I used to know a gal that was a manager at McDonald's, and she used to tell me that people would go through the drive-thru on purpose. This was conscious. Then they park, they get inside and say, oh, you didn't put my fries in. I ordered, but you didn't do fries. Or you didn't do the burger. And they know that they did because they've got quite a system. But they said, there's just some people that are that way. They feel like, oh, I'm getting away with something if you give me a free fries or something. And I said, so do you guys ever say to them, look, we've got a system, we know we do? She says, no, because we're told customer's always right. So then, and I was young when she told me this. I was about 19, 20, and it was a gal I was kind of, if I can say, quasi-dating. that worked for me. So I didn't say anything. But now, oh, here was my point. She then said, there was someone I know that goes to the same church I did, and they do that. Now, I was young at the time when she told me that. Now I would have said, so you allow your brother or sister to stumble. You know it. You know they're sinning, and you're going to allow them to. So if somebody claimed to be a Christian and they said, let me see your card. Here's another one. Oh, I'll call you. He just lied to you, didn't he? Now, I didn't say to be that confrontational and say to him, you lied to me. What I instead would say is, here's probably what I would say in a situation like that is I go, hey, I get it. You're like me. You want to get back with people. But if you're also like me, you get really busy. You get other calls that come in. And when it really isn't to your benefit to call that person back, you may not. And I'm sure maybe you had that intention. And I just don't want you to say or do something that then you're not going to do.
I think sometimes it even comes down to, the perspective of faith is certainly an interesting one. But I also think it comes down to just kind of a more basic human nature, where you give me your business card. You ready? And I've got them too. All right, here's a business card. So I said, oh, interesting. Thank you. I took it because I didn't want to say no. I just didn't want to say, sorry, what you're bringing to me is not interesting. I didn't feel like having that confrontation with someone I barely know. I'd rather it's easier to just say, oh yeah, sure, thanks. And then just whatever. And then I think the problem is then with salespeople, with businesses, with funds, like you're saying, the prejudge is you're hopeful. You're losing judgment to optimism, an optimism caused by desperation maybe. And so you'll say, then I turn around and I'll say, they took my card. They took my card. And if you were a fly on the wall for that conversation, you would know better. You would know they're never going to call you. But in that moment, and I think that it's almost like I'd rather go, la, 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 no, the deal is fine, than have to face the reality of it's never going to happen. As long as it's happening in my head, in my world, there's a comfort that I'm providing, but it's a comfort that's really self-detrimental at the end of the day.
I've got people on my team that are that way as well. I had someone just 2 days ago, so excited, something like that. Oh, I think it's going to go well. It's going to be this. And I said to him, let's remember the 11th commandment. He said, well, what's that? Thou shalt not fool thyself. Because that's what he did. He's fooling himself. Believes that it's going to happen. Now, the example you gave me that sometimes you just want to go ahead and accept that business card. I remember once I was at a coffee shop. I was in my early 30s, and a friend of a friend was with someone else they were meeting with that was a banker. And this person I think was new, was like an SBA lender. And so he gave him this package, right? From there, I saw the friend. The friend then introduces me to the banker. Well, he had more of these folders. They look kind of like, they were just like little folders that had everything about the bank. So he says, oh, why don't I give you mine as well? Now, I could have done it and gone like this just to be nice, but I said, and you and I know that if it's a big bank, that's nothing to them. Well, a business owner, that costs money. So I said, look, you should probably hand this out to someone that's probably the best use of your time. I don't think Wells Fargo wants you to just hand them out like you're Hare Krishna in a straight corner handing things out. Give it to somebody that would be best use. On that same note, might have been about 2 months ago, I got this cold call, semi-cold call from a guy that knows someone that kind of knows me. I had to even think about it. And of course, guess what world he's in? He's just got into the world of financial planning. And so he wanted to know if he could sit down with me. And I said, look, me of all people can appreciate a cold call, but I don't think meeting with me is going to be the best use of your time. Oh, yes, I can very much appreciate that. But I'm like, he's got this whole script. And he said, well, I can very much appreciate that. I just really want to sit down with you just to kind of pick your brain. And then later it's like, no, it's really just to meet and kind of network. Okay, on that note, if you think of that word network, do you know what that word really means? What it means is you're saying you're hoping that I'm going to give you a referral, or he said, well, and you never know how things go. And I said, look, I really am being empathetic to your situation. I don't think it's the best use of your time. And you say that you just want to meet with me. I don't think that's what you really want. You'd rather meet with someone that's qualified, that will become a real client. And he said, well, I know, again, another step, because, but I know business owners like you are networked with so many. I said, I am, and that's the point. There are so many financial planners that I'm already networked with that I just don't even think I'd be a good referral source for you. The best use of your time is not fighting through traffic to then meet with me. That time of fighting through traffic for an hour in the morning and then in the back, you could be used talking to somebody else that would be a better use of your time.
God, you're hitting on so many things that I so completely agree with. You know, my colleague, Ray, he says this thing and I so agree with it. I've been saying and taking credit for it, but we're on the air, so I got to give him credit right now. He says, you know, there are 4 outcomes for any given like sales interaction: win fast, lose fast, win slow, lose slow. He says, win fast and lose fast are the 2 best. Win slow, we'll take as long as you win. Lose slow, that's the only one that's unacceptable. Because exactly that, you know, I may have a call, I feel hopeful about the prospect, even though, again, I'm diluting myself. And now I've got to follow up with them over and over again. And there's an emotional, you know, drain that this has as well. Whereas would you be so much better off calling somebody who may or may not be a good fit, as opposed to following up forever with this person who's just not doing this? But you're hopeful and you're really self-sabotaging in that. And I'll tell you a funny one. I so get it. Similarly, as you're saying to this person, like, I can respect a cold call. I'm empathetic to this. When I was a kid and a telemarketer would call, I treated it as like, oh, it's a free prank call opportunity. I'm going to answer and I'm going to tell them that I'm going to just say the most ridiculous crap and I'm just going to have fun with this. And then I've got into sales and I'm the one cold calling. And oh man, I hate that little kid. Like, I'm trying so hard in such a grueling job. And now when someone will call me a cold call and I'm totally distant, like it's just not anything that I need right now, I'll tell them, like, listen, well, before you go any further, like, I'm telling you right now, I'm not your guy. I'm not. But you're calling, and I start giving them like a pump up. Like, you're working hard. You're going to kill it today. You're going to make it happen. I know you will. Good for you. Because I've been there before and it's not an easy job. And
you know what my line is? But I get it and I go, I promise not to hang up if you promise to stop reading. Stop reading. I won't hang up. And then, of course, I also then give them tips, you know?
That's so funny. But I love that. It all comes back. I love your take on the don't prejudge. And I'm thinking that when I'm asking you that about the projects that you work on, I'm thinking, oh, you know, give everybody a fair shot. That's where my head went, is that's where Reagan's going. But in reality, yeah, don't prejudge. So don't give people the benefit of the doubt.
The answer to your question, we went into a lot, which was good teaching tips for people, but the answer is your actions speak so loudly, I can't even hear your words.
They're going to prove to you whether this is legit or not. I can't go in assuming it's going to be one way or the other. When I was in phone sales, I remember I would tell people this when I would coach them, like 80% of communication is nonverbal. So that 20%, you better be really keyed in on. Every little And those people got really good at reading. Within 5 seconds, they knew if this was like a valid prospect or not. And I'm sure you have that when you meet with these, they send you proposals, you meet with them and you're like, I can just pick up good, bad as this is happening.
We have to be careful about that kind of gut feeling. Some of us like to talk about, and some of us like to say, oh yes, I just have this great intuition, almost like you're this special. First of all, the book I read says that the heart can be deceiving. And I think of how many bad decisions I've made that have been emotional. And I have friends that say, oh, Regan, you have such a good intuition. I've been involved where I've seen that. No, I know you think it's intuition. What I do is I notice the red flags. And when I notice them, I stop. And most people, especially you're a high driver, entrepreneur, or salesperson, you say, I'm a positive person. So when I hear that red flag, you ignore it, or you're so damn positive, you turn it into a green flag, don't you? And so I think back at every time I have been taken advantage, every single time, and I want you to think about this, every time you made a bad business decision, a bad buying decision, every single time that I have, I knew that there was a red flag. I saw it, but I chose to ignore it. And I'm emphasizing my own free will. I chose to ignore it. Now I don't. When I see the red flag, I pick up on it, stop right there.
I got a great line for you. You ever watched the TV show BoJack Horseman by any chance? It's a very dark, beautiful show. But there was a line from it that I think about all the time. And the person said, when you're wearing rosy lenses, all of the red flags just look like flags.
That's one of the trustees at the foundation that owns a mine. So he deals with mining. It's like you're dealing with the mafia.
I was going to say, I've seen Blood Diamond.
Yeah, well, this guy's said something you had, what was it you had just said?
When you're wearing rosy lenses, all of the red flags just look like flags.
Oh, he would say, Regan, will you take the rose-colored glasses off? And the other thing that I've realized over the years in this industry is that when people want something to take place to their advantage, don't be surprised that they're going to lie. And that salespeople seem like they're the worst at figuring that out. They're like, I can't believe you lied to me. I can't believe you. Well, if their back was up against the wall, what do you think he would do? I had a situation once that was like that. It was a pretty big development where there was money that was taken here, this that was happening there. It was in a kind of a corrupt country. And then when it came down to the tough questions I had to ask, I didn't feel like I was getting the truth at all. And so I had this big investor committee meeting with very wise men on this conference call. And they're like, well, of course he's going to tell you what you want to hear. Of course he's going to lie. And I'm like, well, I can't believe that. I thought he'd be a person of integrity. And they'd say, really? Has your back ever been up against? Have you ever just on any little thing? I mean, why wouldn't you think that they would? I have a friend like that owns rental properties. And right now, just the way the economy is going, he feels he's got a really good, convenient excuse from this person. Then he had another one that's 3 months behind, already about to get kicked out. And he said, Regan, I just want to get your gut feeling. Gut feeling? No, it's not gut feeling. Let's think logic. So he called me. He's a friend. And he said, he told me this, which sounds really good. And then he told me this. And then he said that. I'd have a hard time believing that he would really lie and say that his mom died and he's at a funeral and do that. Say, well, wait a minute. Didn't you just say that if he doesn't make payment, he's going to get kicked out? What would you do if you were about to be thrown out the streets and be homeless? They'd say, well, I'm a person of integrity. I'd tell them, you would? Really? You're this close about? Or, same thing, salesperson lied to me. And how do you know that that woman is not a single mom? She's behind on her electric bill. It's the middle of winter. Her electric bill's about to get shut off. She's got a 2-year-old and she can't even afford Gerber or diapers. What if it's that situation? And I've had people say, well, I'd have faith. I would tell the truth. And you sure about that? Before you judge, are you sure? So let's not be so surprised with that. This is why we don't pay attention to what people say. We pay attention to their actions.
I similarly, where I've seen folks and they said, oh, that deal was coming through and the guy pulled out at the last minute. And, oh, I can't believe they did. And it's like, you knew it. You read from previous conversations, from previous emails. They said, we're hoping we can do this month, but blah, 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 blah. And all you heard was, do this month. And so then you got it and started picturing that on your spreadsheet and your bank account. And now when they say, well, we actually do it, you a 20% likelihood of happening. And now you're saying that he was the liar. He didn't lie. It's in your own head. And I know that it sucks and I get that, but you knew it all along. You knew, like, audit it. Like I was saying, I go to therapy and I was saying something to Doc about, like, what was it? I had something with a friend and I'm like, all right, if he did that, like, he would never normally do that. And she would, just from what I've told her about this friend. And I'm like, no, but, and she goes, no, but, like, You said, no, it's fine. And then it happened and you're really surprised because you've diluted yourself. But you're not self-dilution that we do. It's not good. It's really self. And I think, like almost like a padding. Like, let's say I'm failing school and I took that I know that I didn't do well. And they're gifts back on Wednesday to see the grade. I'll fake Wednesday. I F, but if I haven't seen the F, I can go about my world still somewhat failed yet. I haven't failed yet. I haven't seen it. That only happens when I see it. It's real. And I think we do this time, and it doesn't. Like my dad always says, like, that which gets watched gets done. And I think our deal, like, if you're honest about these things, well, then you can do something about it. But if you're not about it and you're tricking yourself just to make you feel, it's like take a broken leg. You still have a broken leg. You feel better, but you still have a broken leg. And if you're walking around on that, it's going to get in. Like, you're not helping.
Have you ever heard about the old farmer with the dog that sits on the board with the nail? Do you know this story? Oh, you'll love this. This will be something you can tell to your salespeople. There's this farmer, and at the end of the evening, he sits in his rocking chair in his front porch. And he's got a dog that's right in front, and there's this board, because it's a deck, with a little bit of a nail. The dog sits right on it with his chin, and every so often he goes, "Arr, arr, arr, arr." And every time his neighbors go by, they hear the dog go, "Arr, arr, arr." And one day a neighbor says, "Why does your dog do that?" And he said, "Oh, he's laying on a board that has a nail." The neighbor says, "Why doesn't he just move?" The old farmer says, "Because it doesn't hurt that bad." In other words, does that person have that motivation?
But if it hurt bad enough, you would move. Wow. Oh, I really like that, because it doesn't hurt that bad.
How many salespeople that you coach, they say, "Oh, I'm committed." Again, it's their words. Your actions speak so loudly, I can't even hear your words. "Oh, I really need to because I'm in a bad situation. I have a lot of debt." "Yeah, but you know what? I don't think it hurts that bad." "No, it does." "Really? Your actions don't prove it." You know what you sound like? You're like that dog that sits on that nail with their board. It really doesn't hurt that bad, does it?
It's unbelievable. Can I tell you, you've got some gems here, man. Like, this is really insightful stuff. There's so many things that just prompted so many thoughts of like how, as people, you never know what you're capable of until you have to. Like in my life, the hardest times that I've gone through in my life prompted me to do the most amazing things in my life and be the best versions of because I had to, and how even, in sales, like there's such a psychology to people buy out of the fear of loss much more effectively than the prospect of gain. And when I coach salespeople, hey, if for your first job, when you get on a call, is to figure out, do they need this or not? If they need it, you're going to help them, and if not, you get them off the phone. Like it's all integrity. Right now, they need this. How do you get them to realize they need this? You're going to have to hit pain. You're going to have to make them uncomfortable. You're going to have to say, "Wow, why are you doing that? Oh my God, that's brutal. Wow, you're losing a fortune doing that. Your business is never going to survive if you keep doing that." You have to get them to hurt. Otherwise, they're never going to take this action to move away from the status quo. And, even people in jobs, when they're in a job that they hate, you'll stay in a job that's just that you don't like forever. It's until you really hate it that you actually move. So then as a result, let's say you just don't like it, you'll be unhappy for years and years because it doesn't hurt enough.
You know what that also just reminded me also, there was something else you were mentioning. One of my first big investors of how this kind of came into the foundation, very wealthy man, we'll just say this, he was the richest man in this state, in this area. And he had me making umpteen calls. This was years ago, before kind of email, if you will, that we did. And I had just dealt with a big breakup. It's in my 20s. And he calls me and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, this." And he goes, "How many calls have you, what have you done?" I go, "Well, I'm in a bad situation. Let me tell you what happened last night." And he said, first thing he asked when I answered the phone is he says, "You working like 40 dogs?" And he really used to talk that way. And I said, "What? You heard me, Rodriguez. You working like 40 dogs." And I said, "Well, I have a feeling you're working like 39, and that just ain't gonna cut it. You need to work like 40 dogs." Now you're saying, what does 40 dogs mean? Does that mean 60 hours a week? It means that however many hours you want to now stop at, you're going to put one extra in. So whatever you might think is 40, it's probably 39. It's like the difference between 211 and 212. Well, then I said, I'm not. In other words, I couldn't tell him what kind of activity I've had this morning because I'm having this pity party. So I explained to him that my girlfriend at that time had just broken up, and he said, I want you to hear me and hear me good, Rodriguez. He used to always call me that. He said, dog in the hunt don't know he's got fleas. And I said, sorry, what did you say? You heard me. I said a dog in the hunt don't know he's got fleas. You know what he meant? I don't care what's going on around you. Because when the dog's in heat, he doesn't care what's going on. He's going to go after what he's going to go after. I don't want to hear about your crap. Get on the phone. Now I remember the part that you said about pain. Because at that time, I was about 28 when I told you what this guy was. Maybe I think I told you when we first talked, he was a franchipreneur versus an entrepreneur. So what he wanted me to do is find locations where they would build this strip center, and we would find maybe 8 to 10 franchises in different categories. Then he owned it, he paid himself rent, and then he had all of these. And he was a former colonel in the military. He didn't make his money by being a colonel. He made his money later as being a franchipreneur. And I said to him, why is it that you like franchises so much? And he said, if there's anything I learned in the military, it was that if you're going to walk through the minefield, be sure and walk through the minefield after somebody. And a franchise has a system. They know that everything that they put together, they have a manual. So now we're going to get to the part about paint. This guy, although he wanted me to work like 40 dogs, right? And although he didn't care what was going on in my life because a dog in the hunt don't know he's got fleas, we did take the last 2 weeks of December off. So I kind of didn't have to work. So imagine a guy like me, and it's the last weekend, it's the week, I think the week of kind of Christmas. I think it was like December 23rd. And I had a friend of mine that did consulting, big end consulting, almost like the McKinsey type that dealt with manufacturing. He knew that I wasn't working, and I also knew that he'd been going through a lot of no after no after no and hadn't made a sale, and he's worried that he may not have a job the next year. And he said, I don't know what to do. And I said, I got an idea. I'm not working right now. I have time. I'm off for now the next week. Why don't you pick me up tomorrow? Let me come with you, and I'll just observe. I don't have anything else to do. And he said, oh, okay, great. Because he thought wanted to see if maybe I could pick up on something that he did. So he was explaining to me the kind of sales training that they go through in this company, and that they have this thing, I don't know what you'd call it, that they say you've got to close a person 8 times. I was like, oh, I've never heard of such a thing. And they go, yeah, because supposedly only 90% on the first time say yes. So then if you do the other, 80% would say yes if you try the second. And then the third, so you want to go up until 8 times. And I said, my goodness, what if the guy says no and he says it firmly? And he goes, well, you still want to do it? And I thought, okay, I'll just wait there till I get there, see what happens and see what his close is. I'm going to observe and then give him feedback as I told him I would. That's what he said. Come with me on the sales call. I'll buy you lunch afterwards. I'm like, right, deal. So we're on this call and he's going through what he does and how he can help with manufacturing companies and find areas where he may not see that there's areas they can improve. And the owner says, doesn't interest me. So my friend goes through again, closes him again. He said, no, like I said, I don't think there's really a fit. Takes a deep breath, and he goes again like a broken record. At that time, the guy behind the desk, the owner, looks at me like thinking, is he not hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth? So my friend goes again, 4th time. Now this time, got upset. Again, it's the day before December 23rd, right before Christmas. So he takes a deep breath. He said, I said no. And my friend again didn't want to do this, but again, he's trained by the company that says, don't listen to the no. You got to do 8 and you've only done 5. You got to do another. So my friend has the courage. He takes a deep breath as well. And he goes again. And I thought, dude, we're going to get kicked out of here. So while he goes again, I said, I just want to say something. I'm not with him. And the guy behind him goes, well, they go, I am with him, but I mean, I'm not with him. I'm not with his company. I'm not with this. And at this point, I realized my friend has not made a sale in months. He says he's worried he's going to lose his job. And he did say, I'll buy you lunch. And again, I didn't do this just to have fun and say, I'm not with him and then get a free lunch. So I thought, come on, man. Speaking of empathy. So I thought, what do I do at this point? And I realized I'm going to take a risk. Because this man was over 40. I was 28 at the time. And I kind of had a bad back. I'm now 51. And I got to tell you, my back hurts more at 51. They say that most people have your back has a life expectancy of about 40. Have you heard that? Do you have a bad back, Max?
I have had back surgery. I had a vertebrae fusion a couple of years ago.
Perfect. So here's what I did. I decided to take a risk. I didn't know, but I knew the guy was like 60. So I said, I'm not with him. As I told you, I said, I'm with him, but I'm not with him. I just came along because I'm not working today. Things are kind of slow. But I do think I know what my friend is trying to do here. The guy looks at me like, what? Because he's not listening to a thing I'd say. I think what he's trying to say is, and I thought I'd better come up with something quick because we're like this close to getting kicked out. And I said, do you have back pain? I figured that's the risk I'm taking. He's either going to say yes or no. He said, actually, I used to. Just like him, he said, but now I had back surgery. I write, this is perfect. And I said, so wait a minute. For how many years did you have back pain? He said, man, for 30 years, I had back pain and would ignore it and didn't know. And nobody let me see it. And I said, so then when did you have it? Well, I had it 18 months ago. I said, what? You know the exact, oh, yeah. And I said, and what did you realize? Well, what I realized was I was in a lot more pain than I thought, but I was just used to it. And I said, that is what my friend is trying to tell you. And that's why he wouldn't shut up. Even after the 6th time you said no, and you thought, why is he not listening? Because he sees that there's pain all over your manufacturing plant and you don't see it, just like you didn't see the back pain. So he walked away with the sale. He was happy to buy me lunch. It's about pain. You got to fight the pain. You're right.
Can I tell you? So Reagan, believe it or not, we're like at time. This was an unbelievable conversation. I'm sure there's a sales team I work with that I'm like, I want to get the and just send it and be like, you all need to listen to this right now. I got to tell you, Reagan, we've got to have you back on the show. I didn't even expect this to where the conversation would go, but oh my God, this was unbelievable.
So here's wrap up everything we've said. I can wrap it up in a few words. Believe in everybody, depend on no one. Expect the best, but be mentally prepared for the worst. You're still going to be positive, hoping that you're going to make the sale. Believe in everybody, but let's not depend on them. Let's keep going. Expect the best, but now let's not be surprised. Be mentally prepared for the worst. And also, no matter what it is that happens in your life, just remember, the dog in the hunt don't know he's got fleas.
I love that. Reagan, you're the man. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
That's a wrap for this episode of Closing Conversations. Huge thanks to Reagan Rodriguez for joining me. This was one of those conversations that started in one place and turned into something much bigger. Reagan's perspective is simple, but not easy. Believe in people, but don't depend on them. Expect the best, but be prepared for the worst. Stay positive, but don't fool yourself. For founders, leaders, and sellers, that matters, because the deal that is probably going to close usually already showed you the warning signs. The person who seems interested usually already told you where they stand. The red flag you ignored was probably never that subtle. If you liked this episode, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs the reminder. And if you're building a sales team that needs more honesty, sharper coaching, and better execution, head over to commissionsales.com. We'll see you next time. Until then, let's get closing.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, you can always catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more episodes of Closing Conversations.